When photos appeared online of a severely bloated orangutan in obvious distress, they sparked widespread concern across the web. But for veterinarian Lucas, the reaction was more than just shock or curiosity. It quickly turned into a fixation. There was something in the image that wouldn't let him go. The animal's eyes looked vacant and unfocused. Its limbs hung limp, as if drained of life. Its belly was horribly swollen. This wasn't a simple matter of poor nutrition. Lucas felt it deep in his gut. There was something more serious at play, and he was determined to uncover what it was. People who knew the zoo where the orangutan was housed confirmed his worst fears. They explained that the animal hadn't just been given too much food. No, the situation was far more complicated, and the deeper Lucas dug, the more urgent his need became. He had to see the animal for himself. He needed to understand what was truly happening. So, when the chance finally came, when he got permission to enter the enclosure and see the orangutan firsthand, Lucas didn't think twice. He stepped into the cage, his heart racing, uncertain of what he'd find. What he saw sent a chill down his spine. The orangutan, who would later be identified as Kuma, barely noticed he was there. It was lying still in a corner of the enclosure, breathing weakly, its eyelids drooping with exhaustion or indifference. For a moment, Lucas feared the animal had already passed. Swallowing hard, he crouched beside the massive creature. He slowly reached out, pressing gently on the swollen stomach. The skin felt stretched, the belly unnaturally hard. Kuma didn't react, he didn't growl, he didn't move at all. This wasn't just a case of extreme weight gain, it was something completely different. As Lucas continued his initial examination, it became alarmingly clear that the rumors had been accurate. Kuma wasn't simply overweight, he was dangerously ill. And if no one intervened soon, it might be too late to save him. But what could have caused such rapid and extreme swelling? How had the orangutan declined so fast? Lucas didn't have all the answers, but he knew one thing with certainty. There was no time to waste. Meanwhile, visitors had been raising red flags for months. On social media, in public reviews, even by speaking directly to zoo staff. But their concerns fell on deaf ears. The employees at the privately run zoo dismissed the warnings as overreactions. Orangutans get fat all the time, they'd reply with indifference. Nothing unusual about it. But that wasn't true. Like the other animals in the mismanaged facility, Kuma was trapped in a small, dreary cage. The walls were bare. The ground was made of hard concrete. There were no trees to climb, no enrichment at all. And though the staff claimed the animals were simply lazy, anyone with empathy could see what was really happening. They were suffering. Still, Kuma's situation stood out. His weight had shot up in recent months, and now he barely moved at all. Most zoo-goers assumed he'd been overfed, but those familiar with the zoo's troubled past thought otherwise. There were strange rumors, stories of things that couldn't be explained by mere neglect. Then, something unexpected happened. An off-duty police officer brought his 2 children to the zoo. He'd always felt uneasy about wild animals in captivity, but his kids had pleaded to go. So, against his instincts, he agreed. The visit left a deep impact on him. From the moment he entered, he was horrified. The cages were cramped. The animals looked sickly. Some had visible wounds. Others paced in tight circles. When he reached Kuma's cage, he froze. The orangutan looked worse than anything he'd ever seen. Something broke inside him. He couldn't just walk away. He couldn't pretend it wasn't his problem. He felt a deep urge to take action. The next day, he initiated a formal investigation into the zoo, citing animal abuse and serious neglect. But it was a huge challenge. He knew he'd need help. So he contacted a colleague and brought him on board. Together, they started gathering proof. Photographs, written records, witness accounts. Eventually, one of those photos, the image of Kuma lying bloated and helpless, was leaked online. It went viral in no time. People across the internet reacted with shock, sadness, and endless questions. How could things have been allowed to get this bad? And more importantly, what had really happened to Kuma? Online forums filled with speculation. Was this cruelty, neglect, some unknown disease? Sorry for the interruption. Before we go on, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. It means a lot to us. Thank you. Among the thousands who saw that photo was Lucas. The vet lived just a few hours from the zoo, and when he spotted Kuma's picture, he felt both disturbed and intrigued. His professional instincts kicked in instantly. Something was off. Something didn't add up. He kept digging. On the zoo's outdated website, he stumbled upon older pictures of Kuma, taken about a year ago. In those photos, the orangutan appeared completely normal. He looked healthy, strong, engaged with his surroundings. That made his current condition all the more disturbing. How could such a drastic transformation happen in only a year? What had they done to him? Lucas picked up the phone and dialed the zoo's number, but instead of a receptionist, a police officer answered. That's when Lucas learned the truth. The zoo had already been closed down. An investigation was already underway. Temporary caretakers were now tending to the animals. And Kuma? He was still alive, but just barely. The process of relocating and treating the animals was slow and difficult. There were dozens of them, and all needed immediate medical care. The zoo had let them all down. That's when Lucas stepped forward with an offer. He told them he was a freelance veterinarian with years of experience treating exotic animals. He volunteered to help with the rescue, free of charge. The officers, overwhelmed and short on staff, gratefully accepted his offer. That same afternoon, Lucas packed his gear and hit the road. Though he planned to help every animal he could, one in particular was always on his mind. Kuma. When he arrived, Lucas was welcomed by the lead vet in charge of the operation. At first, the man seemed optimistic, even energized, until Lucas asked specifically about the orangutan. Then his attitude shifted. He looked down, clearly uneasy. They hadn't examined Kuma yet. There were simply too many emergencies, too many animals on the edge of death. And to be honest, many of the staff had already given up on Kuma. His condition was so poor they doubted he'd make it. But Lucas wasn't ready to give up. Eventually, he made his way to the enclosure. He gave Kuma a quick physical exam and found something alarming. The orangutan's enormous stomach wasn't just fat. It was swollen and inflamed. Something was blocking his digestive system. As Lucas investigated further, he uncovered the disturbing cause. Kuma had swallowed a massive quantity of plastic, likely discarded food trays left by negligent staff. The pile of plastic inside his belly had caused a major blockage. It prevented him from digesting food or passing waste properly. It was slowly poisoning him from within. Thankfully, this was something Lucas knew how to treat. With the right care, steady hands, and about a month of recovery, Kuma could survive. Even so, Lucas felt a lingering frustration. He had arrived expecting to jump in right away, to give Kuma the immediate attention he needed. Instead, he faced a harsh truth. Things at the zoo were far worse than he'd imagined. Everywhere he looked, animals were suffering. The staff was stretched too thin. The lead vet was clearly overwhelmed, and triage had become the only option. As heartbreaking as Kuma's case was, he'd have to wait. Lucas gave a silent nod, accepting the situation. As a vet, his responsibility was to all the animals, not just the ones that touched him most deeply. So, without complaint, he rolled up his sleeves and got to work. For the next 2 hours, Lucas didn't stop. He performed health checks on animals scheduled for transport. Some were thin and weak, others had open injuries. Most had lived in filth for weeks, maybe longer. Their eyes told stories no words could describe. Still, Lucas kept going. He checked heart rates, tested reflexes, cleaned wounds, did everything he could to give them a fighting chance. As the sun sank lower in the sky and the last emergency animals were loaded into transport crates, the chaos began to fade. The remaining animals, the ones stable enough to wait, would be moved later that week. Suddenly, the zoo grounds grew quiet. Volunteers packed up their supplies for the evening. The lead vet shook Lucas's hand, thanked him, and left. Now, Lucas was alone. He stood still in the fading light, watching the last truck disappear through the staff gate. Then he turned slowly toward the orangutan enclosure and let out a long breath. This was the moment. He had waited for this ever since seeing that haunting image online. And now, at last, nothing was stopping him. Yet, a tight feeling settled in his stomach. Despite all he knew, despite years of experience, countless exams and surgeries, and work with dozens of species, Lucas couldn't shake the sense that this time would be different. Even though the orangutan appeared weak, it was still a wild creature, a massive and unpredictable force of nature, and Lucas would be going in by himself. Everyone else had already walked away. The staff had essentially given up on Kuma. They wouldn't go near him. But Lucas wasn't like the rest. He inhaled deeply, set his shoulders, and stepped into the enclosure. He moved with care, each step light against the dusty floor. He didn't want to startle the animal, but the orangutan didn't react. In fact, it didn't respond at all. For a moment, Lucas's heart froze. Had he arrived too late? Was he looking at a dead body? Then, faintly, the orangutan's chest lifted and fell. A slow, heavy breath escaped through its nostrils. Lucas let out a sigh of relief. Gently, he edged closer, his movements slow and open to show he meant no harm. Still, the orangutan didn't seem interested. Kuma turned his head a little, cracked one cloudy eye open, then let it close again. No fear, no aggression, just a deep, painful indifference. Lucas knelt beside the creature and began examining him. The orangutan's body told a tragic story, bloated and inflamed, the abdomen tight in a way that didn't align with mere fat. This wasn't just bad nutrition. It was something far worse. As he worked, something caught Lucas's attention. There was no waste in the cage, not a single sign. For an animal of this size, lying in one place for weeks, that was a major warning sign. The orangutan wasn't just ill, he was obstructed. He couldn't pass waste, which meant his body was collecting toxins by the hour, slowly poisoning itself. There was only one solution: surgery. Lucas opened his medical kit. His hand stayed steady, but his heart was racing. He had the instruments. What he didn't have was assistance. No technician, no anesthesia machine, no support if something went wrong. And worst of all, sedating an animal in such a fragile state was extremely risky, potentially fatal. He paused, reconsidering everything. But when he looked at Kuma, silent and on the brink, he realized there was no more time. He had to act. He prepared the sedative and injected it slowly. Thankfully, the orangutan slipped into unconsciousness without resistance. Once Kuma's breathing was steady, Lucas took a calming breath and made the first incision. Despite the years since he'd been in school, His hands moved with the confidence of experience. He had spent the night reviewing orangutan anatomy. He knew what to expect, and what he found confirmed his worst assumptions. The intestines were badly swollen. They were stretched to a dangerous level, packed full of trapped waste. But that wasn't the worst part. Deep inside the digestive tract, Lucas found the real cause of the blockage, a compacted mass of plastic trays, the kind used for serving food, thin, bendable, and carelessly tossed aside by zoo workers, left where a hungry, curious orangutan could reach them. Kuma had swallowed them repeatedly. Over time, they built up into a dense, undigested obstruction. Lucas worked carefully, gently massaging the gut and making a precise cut. Suddenly, a rush of waste exploded outward, releasing the unbearable pressure that had tormented Kuma for weeks. With calm hands, Lucas pulled the plastic out, one piece at a time. The stench was overpowering. Cleaning it up was exhausting, but he kept going. He flushed the area, sterilized the wound, and closed it with delicate stitches. Then he gave Kuma fluids to fight shock and dehydration. There was nothing more he could do. Now, all that was left was to wait. The next morning, Lucas returned early, heart pounding. He hadn't slept. His mind had replayed the surgery all night. What if the anesthesia had been too much? What if the infection had already taken hold? But when he stepped into the enclosure, his fears faded. Kuma was awake. Dazed, yes, but awake. And he had shifted. The orangutan was sitting up, leaning against the wall. His eyes followed Lucas as he came in, and for the first time there was recognition. The lead veterinarian and remaining staff were shocked. They had been bracing for the worst. Instead, they witnessed a near miracle. Lucas knelt beside him, a quiet smile spreading across his face. He had done it. He had saved him, and at that moment he knew what he had to do. He would stay. He would oversee Kuma's recovery himself every single day until the orangutan was strong enough to be moved to a safe, permanent home. Thanks to Lucas's swift action and steady resolve, the animal the world had forgotten was finally given a second chance, and Lucas, in turn, had rediscovered his own sense of purpose. Did you enjoy this story? What would you have done in Lucas's place? Tell us in the comments. If you like the story, subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Even when everyone else walks away, one person's courage can make all the difference. Thanks for listening, and see you in the next video. Have an amazing day.